All right. So as I mentioned, I would be covering identity and access management, which is the full form of IAM. And basically, if you are from computing, you would know that IAM is also part of another concept which is called AAA. So AAA is authentication, authorization, and accounting, which basically means who you are. I mean, whenever a user is trying to access any system or resource, the first step is authentication. There are multiple ways to authenticate a user or entity, either through password or using certificates. The next is authorization, which essentially means that what capabilities that you have and what are you allowed to do. And the third is accounting. So whenever a user accesses the system, they should be able to do some changes, right? So we need to track those changes, and we can log these into some sort of using some sort of logging mechanism. And that's where accounting comes into picture. And this actually defines that whatever action you do, you are accountable for that, right? So this accountability only comes until unless you log or you have a trail of what you are doing, right? So this trail, or you can say these logs, are pretty important for what a person has done after logging into a system. All right. So these all capabilities or AAA system is essential of any computing or distributed computing resource. And in AWS, we have a service called Identity and Access Management, which is nothing but authentication, authorization, and accounting service or AAA service. So identity means authentication, access management means authorization. And then if you talk about accounting, so IAM does not provide accounting on its own, but it provides this service through another service that is called cloud trail logs. Okay. So IAM writes into cloud trail logs. So that's why it's only called identity and access management, not identity access and accounting. So the services which help to provide accounting is called cloud trail log. So I think this would be clear, right? This is authentication where you either are provided through password or and maybe certificate, right? So this essentially, once you have authentication, the system checks what are your capabilities and what type of authorization that you have. And then it will also do some sort of accounting that is logging all of your activities. Now, you would be also familiar with users and groups, right? Categorize all the users with the similar job roles into some sort of groups. Like, for example, we can create a group called developers. So essentially, this comes from the functionality that we had in Unix and Linux system, where we can have groups and we can assign permission on the group level. And we can also, you can say, decide what this group, for example, here developers, are able to access and what they are not allowed to access. Similarly, we can have another group called infrastructure engineers, and there will be some, I would say, policies attached to those, which will define what resources they can access and what they cannot. And these are essentially users and groups, maybe individual users, or if we talk about AWS services, maybe groups. So when we are working with individual users and groups, we provide them some sort of permissions, right? So these permissions are provided through a guiding document, which is called a policy document. And these policy documents are written in JSON essentially, and I will show you one of that. The next thing is roles. So roles are essentially provided for one service to access another service. So then you would be requiring some sort of roles. Now keep in mind, roles can also be used to provide access to individual users as well as services. All right. But the answer should be related to IAM, that is from the best practices of IAM.